Sometimes when there is a new device coming out soon that I am really excited about, I have this strong desire to want to understand how this device is going to actually look in person, how its size and dimensions are going to compare with other devices that I am familiar with. In the past, I've gone as far as making little paper cutouts to get a general idea of the dimensions, the scale of a device, an extremely nerdy thing to do. But in today's video, we're going to up the ante a little bit and try something new with the Z Fold 7. You guys know that I've used websites like comparesizes.com to plug in dimensions for, in this instance, the Z Fold 6 in green, the Z Fold 7 in red, to get an idea in three-dimensional space what the size difference is going to be. But it's just not the same as having it in person, being able to really see it and compare it to the other device in a more literal sense. And yesterday, something occurred to me that I genuinely can't believe had not occurred to me sooner. I have a 3D printer and I have this program called Orca Slicer, and as it turns out, it is trivially easy to add a cube to your project and then simply scale that cube to the known dimensions of a device. I'll delete that one that I just made and I'll click on the one that's already correct and I'll show you the dimensions. Those are the rumored dimensions for the Galaxy Z Fold 7. So I plugged in those figures, I sent it over to my 3D printer, and here's what I ended up with. According to the reputable leaks on the internet from Ice Universe and OnLeaks, this is basically exactly the size, dimensions, shape that the Galaxy Z Fold 7 is going to be. Now, you may have noticed when I showed you my Orca Slicer program that I printed this thing out at 3.9 millimeters, which is exceptionally thin. And you may be remembering, hey, OnLeaks said it was going to be 4.5 millimeters. Well, yes, and Ice Universe said it was 3.9. And I've already explained in a video why there is this discrepancy, but I will explain it again here very quickly just so that we're clear. When OEMs give their measurements, their dimensions for these devices, they do not include the bezel that goes around the outside of the device. If you measure this device here, it is not 5.6 millimeters. This is the Z Fold 6. It's actually closer to like 6.1, 6.2 millimeters. If you measure it in the middle of the device, not at the bezel, it does drop back down to 5.6 millimeters. They don't include that bezel, which is raised so that when you close the device, the screen is not touching the other side of the screen. So for simplicity's sake, when I printed this, I just printed the thickness of the body, not the thickness of the bezel. And I didn't add any kind of bezel to it because I'm not that good at 3D printing things. So just keep that in mind. This is not the thickness including the bezel. But the dimensions are correct. And what I can do now is I can grab my Z Fold 6 and I can slide this into frame, and you can now see the difference in size between these two devices. And as you can see, the Z Fold 7 is definitely going to be a little bit taller than the Z Fold 6, and if we actually just sort of line them up like this, you should also be able to see that it is quite a bit wider than the Galaxy Z Fold 6, which of course is going to have ramifications on that cover display as well. But just sticking with the opened screen, you're going to have more room when you're split screen multitasking. And this sort of aspect ratio is actually remarkably similar to another foldable device that I have. If I trade out the Fold 6 for my Oppo Find N5, you will see that we are literally just millimeters apart. The Oppo device is slightly taller, but it is slight. And then in terms of the thickness or the width, depending on how you want to look at it, it is again slightly wider, but only by millimeters. If you really want to see a close analog, that Oppo Find N5 is very, very close. In terms of thickness, there is also a noticeable difference. Now, unfortunately, my 3D print did not come out completely perfect, but that should be pretty darn close. And as you can see there, it is so close to the thickness of that USB-C port, it's not even funny. But like I mentioned, there are ramifications for this cover display. So I wanted to do another print that was going to be like the Z Fold 7, but when it's closed. The problem is you can't really find those measurements online. No one has leaked those measurements yet. So I kind of had to figure out a general ballpark assumption myself. So what I did is I took the height, because obviously that's going to be staying the same. For the thickness, The article on OnLeaks said that the device will be around 9 millimeters thick because, again, they said it was 4.5 millimeters thick with that bezel. So you fold it over, you're going to double up. So about 9 millimeters thick. But in terms of the width of the device, you would think you could just cut this in half, but it's not quite half. So what I did is I went and I found the dimensions for the Galaxy Z Fold Special Edition, and I found that it was about a 48%, 48.2 if I'm remembering correctly. That was the reduction in width when you folded it. So I took that same ratio and I printed out this. Now this is probably going to confuse some people, but I didn't want to use any more filament than I had to use. So I basically put in those dimensions and then I cut out the middle. So let me be clear about this. The Z Fold 7 cover display is not this section inside. This is not the bezel. This is the full size of the device. Ignore the hole in the middle. This is the full size of the device, and the bezel will be thinner than this. This, again, is the full size. The outside perimeter is the full size of the Galaxy Z Fold 7 cover display. So if you line this up, again, it is definitely taller, but if you sort of set this on top, you can see that it is quite a bit bigger. That hole in the middle is basically the size of the Z Fold 6. So we're adding all of that dimension to the outside of the device. It is significantly wider. Look how much wider that is going to be. That is much more like a standard normal phone. I found that in terms of the thickness comparison, you can see the difference much better when they're both laying flat on a table this way. That is quite a big difference. The Z Fold 7 is basically coming up to the bottom of the USB-C port on the Z Fold 6. That's going to fit in your pocket and in your hand a lot more comfortably, I think. It's amazing how just looking at the numbers online kind of give you one impression, but actually seeing the stuff in person can give you another impression entirely. From this, I really do think that if you want a close comparison, it's going to be the Oppo Find N5. If you want to know how different that cover display experience is going to be, I think that you pretty much have it. Man, this is hard. I think that you pretty much have it right there between these two devices. It's not going to be exactly that, but it's going to be really close to that. And then when you talk about those inner displays, again, not exactly this, but it's going to be really darn close to this between the Fold 6 and the Fold 7. And to make things even more interesting, when you measure with the bezel included, the Galaxy Z Fold 7 is allegedly 4.5 millimeters thick, but like I showed you guys in the video I mentioned earlier, when you measure the Oppo Find N5 with that bezel, guess what? It's basically 4.5 millimeters as well. So in many different ways, this device is going to be your closest analog to the Galaxy Z Fold 6, and I think that is pretty impressive. Of course, I'm not talking about camera specs and battery specs and charging. I'm talking about the dimensions, the physical dimensions of the device. But guys, I hope that my little experiment was entertaining and informative for you guys. I think that this will be one of the better demonstrations available to you to kind of understand what you should be expecting out of this upcoming Galaxy Z Fold 7. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. If you have any advice on things I could do to maybe make this comparison even better, I would also accept those in the comments down below as well. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.